This is the First and Big Ten podcast with CNHI sports writers Kevin Brockway and Elton Hayes. It's time to talk college football.
Welcome back to the First and Big Ten podcast. Kevin Brockway from CNHI Sports Indiana with Elton Hayes from CNHI Sports Pennsylvania. Coming off another big week in Big Ten action, Elton, and I know that you were in Iowa City to see Penn State against Iowa, a matchup of ranked teams and a defensive struggle, and Penn State found a way to come out on top.
It did. Heading into this game, Penn State entered at number 10 in the country. But a few people are out there skeptical about the strength of schedule so far. They had won big, but they really hadn't played as one of the Penn State players said post-game, a worthy opponent. They got that test this weekend. Kinnick Stadium is a difficult venue. It was interesting. The way the stadiums are situated is the sidelines are only separated by a few feet from the crowd. So I've heard that opposing coaches tell their players to keep their helmets on. But no, it was an amped up environment, night game, and Penn State did what it had to do. It really relied on a heavy dose of running, which was a bit different from the passing game that it's been really, which it's really turned to this year. But they found a way to get a victory, and they jumped up to number 7 in the rankings after it.
Yeah, and Elton, I wrote about this in the Big Ten Notebook this week, but both Michigan State and Iowa, two teams that are really struggling offensively. Iowa with just one touchdown over the last 2 weeks. What did you see from Nate Stanley's and Iowa's offense? Was it a case of Penn State's defense shutting them down? I know they gained a lot of yards in that game; they just couldn't punch the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, no. Penn State's defense is really a kind of a bend by break unit. Nate Stanley passed for 286 yards. A couple of receivers, had over 60 yards on receiving that game. But, they got the pressure on him when needed. The defense recorded 2 sacks, but they just really kept him out of the end zone there until that fourth quarter when Iowa scored, it's like you said, its first offensive touchdown in 8 quarters. But, the defense was very strong. Shut down ground game, which should be no surprise. I think it's that run defense is 8th in the nation. But, just did a really good job of bend but don't break.
Yeah, and you talked about getting the running game going as well for Penn State. And,
yes.
They're going to need that balance going forward because obviously they've got some big matchups, coming up with, Michigan next week and, down the road against Ohio State. They're going to need to show that they can run the ball as well as they can throw it.
No, and that was one of the questions that I had, through the first 5 games was, the offensive or the passing attack was clicking. Clifford had 5 consecutive 200-yard passing games, but that run game was a bit, non-existent. They really, turned that around this week. Freshman running back Noah Kane had 15 carries there in that fourth quarter for 67 yards. And I think it was the first time all year that Penn State had more yards rushing than it did yards passing. But, good to see that offensive line kind of come together and the freshman running back take charge and just kind of run that clock out there in the last 15 minutes.
Ellen, I know you were out there and you had to a chance to talk to some players following the game. What were some of their impressions?
They were happy to get the win. They all knew that going into Iowa was going to be a daunting task. Penn State, before the Maryland game and before Iowa, at the practices that were allowed to attend that last 10 minutes of practice on Wednesdays, they pump crowd noise in there at a very high level. And Franklin said they do this to kind of, give the players an idea of what to expect. They said they generally pump it up louder than they expect it to be. But I think that training and that scenario, those situational scenarios really helped Penn State.
Really proud of our guys. Went on the road, won in a tough place to play, a place that's tough to win on the road. You look over the last 3-4 years, the number of people that they've upset at home, night game in this place, the place was rocking. So I'm really proud of our guys. I thought the first quarter on offense, we looked like a young team. We were making mistakes that we hadn't normally made. But then we calmed down after that point. And I was just proud of how our players and coaches managed the game.
Sean Clifford, the quarterback, was a little hoarse after the game, and he admitted that it was a pretty tough environment, and he wasn't as crisp as he'd like to be that first quarter, but he kind of settled down, and it was 12 of 24 passing for 117 yards. Overall impression of the guys, they were happy to get out of there with the win and be undefeated.
And so, Elton, you had a chance to talk about the defensive performance for some players. What were some of their impressions?
It was physical. It was very physical. The defensive unit, came into that game with, I believe, 25 sacks. They had 10 sacks the week before against Purdue. They didn't match that production this week, but, that offensive line really did a good job with containing Penn State's defensive line. But a couple of players had, really good games. Defensive tackle Robert Windsor tied his career high of 6 tackles. P.J. Mustafer had a really momentum-shifting fumble, forced fumble there in the third quarter that set up a Penn State field goal and kind of, put the game in hand for him.
Football is the momentum's always shifting, especially with a game like this and the team as good as Iowa. So, when you make a play like that, everybody's hyped, and we get the ball down closer to our end zone for our offense. So, that's what I was more happy about, is that I gave the offense a chance to put points on the board because we got a turnover backed up in their side of the field.
All right, and meanwhile, I was in Memorial Stadium for homecoming, Indiana against Rutgers, and really this was no contest from the beginning. Indiana really dominant in a 35-0 win over the Scarlet Knights. They jumped to a 21-0 lead within the first 5 minutes of the game. Then kind of sputtered offensively a little bit, only led 21-0 at the half, didn't score in the second quarter, but then came out, got the ground game going in the second half. Stevie Scott, with a season high in yards, 164 yards on 12 carries, had some big runs to start the third quarter. So they were able to, get the running game going and get some balance in their offense. Another big day for Whop Phillier as well, 10 catches for 182 yards. But really the defense set the tone early with, DeMarcus Elliott with a hit of Rutgers quarterback Johnny Langan. He fumbles, Raekwon Jones recovers, and here's what linebacker Cam Jones had to say about Indiana's dominant defensive effort.
Coach Allen, he's a defensive coach. He emphasized mindset, focus, confidence, effort, tackling, takeaways. And, when you got a coach like that that's hard on you in practice 24/7, they take it out on the game field.
All right, Elton, it was 6 sacks for the Hoosiers, and they held Indiana to 1 yard, or they held Rutgers, to 1 yard passing. And that's pretty hard to do.
No, I saw that stat and I initially thought it was a typo. But, this was part of the problem that Rutgers faced when it got rid of Chris Ash at the quarter-way through the season. Just a lot of distractions. It's an embattled program. Players decided to use a self-imposed red shirt. But, I don't know where the program goes from here. We're halfway through the season, and I just kind of find it difficult to see if they're going to pick up that second win of the year.
Yeah, Johnny Langan is their third-string quarterback. They're without their top receiver, Rasheem Blackshear, who's on a red shirt. Isaiah Pacheco, tried his hardest, but there's just, with Coach Nunzio Campanelli in there, there's just really, no direction offensively, and a really bad offensive line as well. And you factor that all in, and it's just going to be a really, long year for Rutgers until they find a new coach.
No, it is. It is. Greg Schiano, if it's him, can't get there soon enough.
That's true. Ellen, we're at the halfway point of the season. I think this would be a good opportunity to kind of reflect, look back, and look ahead, and kind of give our midseason grades here, midseason report card.
Yeah.
Let's start with, the best team that you've seen through the first half of the season.
I'm going to go ahead and say Wisconsin right now. This defense is playing at the offense with Jonathan Taylor, it's really done what it's supposed to do. They've been very impressive. They've got a interesting game with Ohio State coming up here, which will be conference defining, with the implications that it carries. But through 6 games, Wisconsin has really impressed me, and I just don't see any flaws in their game right now.
Yeah, the defense has been tremendous under Jim Leonard, but I'm still going to go with Ohio State. I think they're a little more complete.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback play with Justin Fields, I think, separates them a little bit. Cohn has been good, but he's not the dynamic quarterback that Fields is.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the running game with J.K. Dobbins to complement what Wisconsin has with Jonathan Taylor. And they've got the defense as well in terms of getting after the quarterbacks and sacks. Maybe not, holding teams to as low a yardage or shutouts that Wisconsin is, but still a pretty dynamic defense. So I'm going to give Ohio State the slight edge, but, we'll find out on the field at the end of the month if I'm right or if you're right.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's going to be the game of the year so far in the Big Ten. But you're right. One of those teams has to lose. And that game will carry conference and I think college football playoff implications.
Okay, moving on. Who's been the best player in the first half of the season, in your mind, Elton?
I'm going to go with Justin Fields, the Ohio State quarterback. 1,289 yards passing and 18 touchdowns. He's thrown just one interception. He's also been effective on the ground, running for 283 yards and 8 touchdowns. And, there was a lot of questions about the state of this Ohio State team with losing Urban Meyer, losing Dwayne Haskins. But Fields has really stepped in as a first-year player up there and has done a really good job with his kind of, maintaining that level of consistency that the program's shown, lately. And, so he's going to get my Player of the Year nomination.
Yeah, of course, Fields coming from Georgia has definitely surpassed, I think expectations in terms of, there's really been no adjustment period for him. And you look at Georgia losing to South Carolina last week, maybe they wish they had him back because Fromm really struggled in that game. But I'm going to still go with Jonathan Taylor.
Okay.
He's on pace for another 2,000-yard season. 129 carries, 825 yards, 14 touchdowns already. And, he's getting some receiving touchdowns this year, too, which he didn't get last year. He's added that to his repertoire. He's catching passes out of the backfield. He's really becoming an even more complete back. And but certainly I think Taylor and Fields, I think that'll be another one that, will show on the field at the end of the month when Ohio State plays Wisconsin.
I'm telling you, man, that game is going to be big. There are a lot at stake for both teams. We're going to find out, if Wisconsin, if this defense is the real deal, and for Ohio State, we're going to see if they finally slip up. So definitely looking forward to that game.
Yep. And now moving on to the best freshman, there have been a lot of good young players in this league. Elton, who do you see as the top freshman of the group?
I'm going to say Penn State running back Noah Cain right now. I know some people probably scratch their head at that one, but Penn State this year has really relied on a running back by committee approach. But Noah Cain has looked in the past several weeks, at least has looked like the most productive back out of that rotation. He tallied his second 100-yard rushing game against, last week against Iowa. And he just really, added another dynamic to that Penn State offense and really enhanced the running game. So he's really impressed me so far through 6 games this season.
I'm going to stay closer to home, Ellen. I'm going to say the Michael Penix, quarterback from Indiana. He was banged up a little bit with the shoulder, missed a few games, but when he's been healthy, he's been very good. 91 for 91 completions and 131 attempts, 1,091 yards, 9 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He's been Big East Freshman of the Year twice, and he's been very sharp. They've been 3-1 in his starts. He completed 20 in a row in a game against Michigan State that was his lone loss as a starter. But he's proven to be, I think, a guy that has, been able to handle the pressure so far. And he's a guy that can, I think, carry Indiana to a bowl game as long as they keep him healthy.
Yeah, no, we talked about him at Big Ten Media Days in Chicago. And just about, him adding another dynamic to that offense, being a dual threat guy. And kind of, taking that Indiana to the next level and making them bowl eligible. He's really he's done a good job, and I've been impressed by his performances so far.
All right, Elton, biggest disappointment. What team has let you down the most?
I'm gonna have to go with Michigan State. This is a team that entered the season with a lot lofty expectations after. They were supposed to have this great defense. They opened up with a 28-7 win over Tulsa. The defense held Tulsa to minus 73 yards rushing, but they sit at 4-3 right now on the season. They're 4th in the Big Ten East, and they're coming off a 38-0 loss to Wisconsin. I believe they in the 2 losses they've lost in back-to-back weeks. Granted, the schedule, they played number 4 Ohio State, number 8 Wisconsin, but, they've been outscored 72-10 during those last 2 weeks. And I just don't see how it gets easier for them. They have Penn State next week. They've got Michigan still on the schedule. But D'Antonio definitely has to be feeling a little bit of pressure right now with the way the season has played out for his Spartans.
Yeah, he got a little testy after the game. I don't know if you saw that after they got shut out by Wisconsin, about him not making changes on his offensive staff or not hiring new people. He did make changes, but he just kind of shuffled some guys around, demoted some guys, promoted some guys. But the offense at Michigan State, which, I kind of thought that they got a little better in the Indiana game, but they've taken a step back again. They're another team, just one touchdown in their last 2 games. I'm going to say Michigan, because I think that the expectations were so high in the beginning of the season. They were picked preseason, to win the Big Ten. And I don't see this as a Big Ten championship caliber team. Now, they've rebounded a little bit. They did win at home against Iowa. Just barely, they didn't exactly, the offense has still been up and down there in Ann Arbor. And I think given the expectations, it wasn't like Jim Harbaugh hid from those expectations during Big Ten Media Day. He said, "Hey,
invited them. Yeah,
I think we're the team to beat." Well, you don't look like you've been the team to beat so far this year. No. You got trounced by Wisconsin. You've got Penn State coming up on the schedule. I don't see them winning that game. I don't see them beating Ohio State. I think they're just going to have another one of those 3-4 loss seasons, go to a bowl game down in Florida. But if you're Michigan and you're paying Harbaugh that money, shouldn't your expectations be higher?
No, definitely. Michigan was I guess, considered to win the Big Ten East this year. People expected them to take advantage of an Urban Meyer-less Ohio State, and they've just been very inconsistent. Even though I know they won last week against Illinois, but that first half, they just were, a lot of mental mistakes. The offense has not looked good. They've had 17 fumbles. I believe they've lost 9 of them. But, with that said, they come to Happy Valley this week. That could go a long way to kind of put Harbaugh back in the good graces. After that, they've got Notre Dame. But, the schedule for Michigan this year, it's heavy on the back end of it. So, first half, which has kind of been the less challenging part of the schedule. I'm just curious to see how they handle that back more challenging end.
Okay, and now looking ahead to the biggest game on the rest of the schedule, and I think we've already given this away. We've talked about it quite a bit. But to me, the biggest game will be coming up at the end of this month in Columbus when Wisconsin faces Ohio State.
No, I agree. That's the one right now that, both of these teams could enter this game undefeated. And, I know they're in different divisions, but, this game does have college football playoff implications. And it would just be interesting to see Justin Fields finally get out there against this vaunted and, see Jonathan Taylor on the other end go against a really strong-looking Ohio State defense. But right now, that's the game of the year, the game to watch in the Big Ten.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. I mean, I just think that it's going to be a great matchup. I'll be curious to see how Wisconsin, that kind of Jim Leonard, Ryan Day matchup. Jim Leonard's been so good as defensive coordinator this season. How does he deal with, Ryan Day's offense, which has been prolific as well and has really added some wrinkles to kind of Urban Meyer's spread. I'll be fascinated to see if Wisconsin can shut Ohio State down.
Definitely. I'm with you on that one.
Let's throw one more out there, Elton. Biggest surprise team to you? What team has kind of, shocked you or has exceeded expectations?
I'm going to go with Minnesota. An 8-game win streak. And if you look at the way that schedule is set up, they could be undefeated when they meet Penn State here in a few weeks. But Minnesota is really, I think they're playing at a high level. The beginning of the season they kind of were slow to get out the gate, but the past couple of weeks in Big Ten plays, the offense has really emerged. The defense has done a good job. So I'm going to go with PJ Fleck and the Minnesota Golden Gophers as my biggest surprise team.
Yeah, well, I'm going to agree with you there. Row the boat. I'm behind it, and I saw them go into Purdue, and I saw what they did in that game, and really kind of, jumped on the Boilermakers, had really good balance, and their receivers are just playing at a really high level. Tanner Morgan completing 21 to 22 passes in that game. They've got it really clicking. I do think defensively they have a few holes, and that could be exposed later in the season. But offensively, they're a team that can score with other teams, and that's what you need in college football, a team that can, put points on the board early and often.
Definitely. They're, like you said, they're rolling the boat over there in Minnesota, and, I believe they're off to their best start.
Yeah, no question.
Yep.
All right, so
heading
that's
into
it
that
for
game.
our first segment, and coming up, we will have our thumbs up and thumbs down. This is Kevin Brockway from CNHI Sports Indiana with Elton Hayes from CNHI Sports Pennsylvania on the First and Big Ten podcast.
Get the latest Big Ten, IU, Purdue, and Penn State football news by following the guys on Twitter. Kevin is at Kevin Brockway G1, and Elton is at EHDC12.
Welcome back to the First and Big Ten podcast. Kevin Brockway from CNHI Sports Indiana with Elton Hayes from CNHI Sports Pennsylvania. Time for our thumbs up, thumbs down segment from the week, our look at the good and the bad from Big Ten action over the weekend. Elton, and I'll start with you. What's your first thumbs up?
I'm going to go give it to Purdue receiver David Bell. A lot of the Purdue's hopes took a hit when Rondale Moore went down with that injury, but David Bell has filled in admirably. Had 9 catches for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns last week against Maryland. His second 100-yard receiving game of the season. He torched Minnesota for 114 yards a few weeks ago, but very impressive. And he played a big role in Purdue's blowout win over Maryland. So David Bell gets my first thumbs up of the week.
Yeah, and then I'm going to stay in West Lafayette. I'm going to go with Jack Plummer. 33 of 41, 420 yards, 3 touchdowns, was named Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. It must have been the moon uniforms, right, that Purdue was wearing. The Neil Armstrong-inspired uniforms. They looked. The young guys stepped up and looked great offensively. I mean, Plummer's a redshirt freshman making his third career start, but 80.5% completion percentage. That's the highest in Purdue history for a quarterback.
That's saying a lot. That's saying a lot. A lot of good quarterbacks have come through West Lafayette.
Yeah, 40 or more attempts, but still, I mean, that's pretty tremendous. I mean, you're talking about Drew Brees, you're talking about Jim Everett, going back Len Dawson, Gary Danielson, all these, great quarterbacks in Purdue lore. So Jack Plummer gets my first thumbs up.
All right. My second thumbs up goes to Michigan running back Hassan Haskins, 12 carries for 125 yards and 1 touchdown. Averaged 10.4 yards per carry against Illinois, and just really had the breakout game that many people were expecting from him at some point this season. It was his first 100-yard effort of the season, but he did very well, played a big role in that win. So Hassan Haskins is going to get my second thumbs up of the week.
My second thumbs up is going to go to Indiana receiver Whop Phillier, the junior, 10 catches, 182 yards. Didn't score a touchdown, but over his last 2 games, he's had 23 catches, which is a school record.
Very impressive.
And he's really blossomed into a really big time target for Michael Penix. And they were joking around. I guess they play 2K and Fortnite together, and when they play those video games together, they also talk about football and talk about strategy and things that they're going to do. And they've developed a really nice connection on the field. So Whop Phillier gets my second thumbs up.
All right, my third thumbs up is going to go to Minnesota wide receiver Tyler Johnson, who has, really flown under the radar this year. Minnesota's defeated, number 20 in the country, but Tyler Johnson his name really hasn't, garnered much attention, but he had another great effort last week against Nebraska. 5 catches for 109 yards. He didn't score a touchdown, but he, averaged 21.8 yards a catch. That was his second 100-yard receiving effort of the season, and he's up to 559 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns this year.
All right, yeah. My third thumbs up is going to go to Shea Patterson, Michigan quarterback. Illinois kind of rallied. They cut the Michigan lead to 28-25, but Patterson came up pretty big with a 9-yard touchdown pass to Donovan Peoples-Jones, and then added a 1-yard touchdown run. So he finished the day 190 touchdowns, no interceptions, and added that touchdown rushing Michigan really needed that win to keep their Big Ten Conference title hopes alive, and Shea Patterson delivered for the Big Blue.
Definitely. My first thumbs down is going to go to Michigan State. This is a team, we kind of brought them up in the midseason awards, but the defense was supposed to be this team's strong suit. The unit has underwhelmed, especially as of late. Has given up 72 points in the last 2 games. And, just really disappointing considering all the hype that the defense unit really garnered this postseason and even the beginning of the season. So Michigan State's, more specifically, its defense is going to get my first thumbs down.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Rutgers passing game. 1 yard passing against Indiana. I mean, that's tremendously hard to do. And if you think about it, Kane Womack, who's the defensive coordinator, he said he was talking to his dad, Dave Womack, and they actually measured out. It was 5 of 13 attempts. So for each attempt, it averaged out to about 3 inches per attempt. I don't know how, like I said, how you can go through a game with just 1 yard passing, but Rutgers did it. So that's my first thumbs down.
This is a season of many firsts for Rutgers football. So just kind of following that trend. My second thumbs down is going to go to Maryland. Purdue beat Maryland 40-14 last week. This is a team that just really entered the season, with some uncertainty with Mike Locksley. They got off to a 2-0 start, which included a win over a previously ranked 21 Syracuse. That seems like eons ago. Maryland has struggled. I think the Maryland that we're seeing now is more indicative of what we can expect from, Mike Locksley. But they just have not been impressive. I know they go to Indiana this week. Or they play Indiana this week, and I'm not expecting them to win that game either. So my second thumbs down of the week is going to go to Maryland.
Yeah, certainly a chance for Indiana to, move a step closer to bowl eligibility if they can take care of business against Maryland. My second thumbs down is going to go to the Illinois run game. They really need a balance in that game to support the young quarterback, Matt Robinson. And wasn't able to do it in that game. 64 rushing yards. Couldn't get anything going on the ground. I know Michigan's defense is good, but Illinois really need their running backs to step up, and they weren't able to.
Yeah. My third thumbs down is going to go to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, another 4-3 team, which some people, heading into the season really considered them as a candidate to win the Big Ten West. They've underwhelmed. They've, beat teams without any pulse, really, Northern Illinois, South Alabama, and Illinois. But the teams that they've faced that are, formidable, they've just kind of, been kind of thrashed by Minnesota 7 last week. Ohio State beat them 48-7 a couple of weeks ago. And Nebraska is just, kind of reeling. Scott Frost, the verdict's still a little too early to, call him a bust or say that he, is not the man for the job. But I'd really be concerned right now if I was a Nebraska fan with the product that I'm seeing out there on the field each week.
Yeah, it might just take a little more time. I know that Scott Frost talked a lot about during, Big Ten Media Day, talked a little bit about, just the physicality and it not looking like those Nebraska teams in the 1990s and the 2000s in terms of, the big guys in the weight room. And I think that's probably where they're lacking right now is in the trenches more than anything. My third thumbs down is going to go to Iowa's offense. I know that, Penn State's been a tough defensive team all year long, but, they've really struggled the last 2 weeks to find a way to get the ball in the end zone. Just one touchdown in the last 2 weeks. They did move the ball, but didn't really punch it in the red zone as well as they could have. So I will go with Iowa as my final thumbs down.
I was there, and I could attest to that. Kind of like the struggles that they had when they were at Michigan. They got the ball within Michigan's 40 number of times, wasn't able to, score any touchdowns, and same thing against Penn State. So, the Iowa offense, while Nate Stanley passed for 286 yards against Penn State, they just weren't able to capitalize. So I'm going to have to agree with you there.
No question. So we will move on to our guest, Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. For the First and Big Ten podcast, this is Kevin Brockway from CNHI Sports Indiana with Elton Hayes from CNHI Sports Pennsylvania.
Don't go anywhere because it's time for Voices of the Gridiron. Here's today's special guest.
Welcome back to the First and Big Ten podcast. Kevin Brockway from CNHI Sports Indiana with Elton Hayes from CNHI Sports Pennsylvania. And we're joined by the first person that befriended me in Indiana. My first night on covering a basketball game at Assembly Hall, came up to me, gave me his card. He does a terrific job covering all Indiana sports and sports throughout the Big Ten for WREF in Evansville, WBRO in Marengo, and on his website, indianasportsbeat.com. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. And Jim, pleasure to have you on.
Oh, it's awesome to be with you guys, man. Great to talk to Elton again, and you as well, Kevin.
Yeah, right. It's always good to talk to me. But, Elton, Jim, we watched Indiana, a fairly dominant defensive performance, albeit against a Rutgers team that really has struggled offensively all season. But, 35-0, only giving up one passing yard. I'm curious your thoughts on the defensive performance and how they take that into Maryland, because it seems like it's been every other week they've followed up a dominant defensive performance with, maybe just kind of a so-so game.
Yeah, that's the thing that you've got to be careful of, especially going on the road. You're stepping up in competition. Of course, there's no place to go but up when you play after you play Rutgers. That's sad to say. But Maryland as a team has been like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde team this year. They started off a team that I thought was going to give some teams trouble in the Big Ten East, and all of a sudden they get into Big Ten play, and the wheels kind of fell off, and Indiana seems they've had some different games, but they seem to be getting more consistent. But I think that Indiana's defense is very young, and they're growing. They're growing through their youth, but, man, I'm kind of impressed with the job they've done, even though they are very young. They're not making a ton of mistakes, and they're getting things done.
And, we've discussed this, Jim, as far as, I think the key to the season, obviously, to go bowling is to keep Michael Penix healthy. He's looked really strong in his starts that he's played all season. Just your thoughts on his development and kind of the key, his poise kind of going into this game, dealing with another road environment.
Well, I'll tell you, keeping Michael Penix healthy is paramount to Indiana's success. And that's not really meant to be a slight to Peyton Ramsey. He does a good job when he comes in, but there's such a difference. He is his talent is so elevated that when he's in there, it's a marked difference, and this team is different. And as you've seen what he's done on the field, I mean, they put up some staggering numbers. The number of receivers that are catching passes, it's like you have no idea where the ball is going to go to when he's in there. And he's got such a quick release. Indiana's, even though they have a very young offensive line, I think they lead the Big Ten in least sacks allowed this season. So he's getting protection from a line that's had to be patched back together. They lost Corey Crunk. They lost Hunter Littlejohn for a little bit, but he's going to be fine. But they don't have a lot of experience there, but yet they're doing the job. But, yeah, his growth has been remarkable. His poise, his abilities are obviously shining through. He goes up to East Lansing, a tough road environment in front of 70,000 people, and he engineers. He put Indiana in a position to win the game, at least. So, yeah, his growth has been nothing more short of pleasing for the Indiana coaching staff, without a doubt, and the Indiana fan base, as Indiana is in a position to not only be bowl eligible before they get out of October, but to possibly go to a pretty decent bowl game this year.
Hey, Jim, it's good to catch up with you again.
Well, man.
Yeah, man. Well, look, the big matchup this week of the Big State Michigan, possibly the whiteout, two top 25 programs, prime time, 7:30 p.m. college game day game. Look at this matchup. Penn State's rushing defense is allowing 53.8 yards per game, which is second in the Big Ten and third in the country. Michigan's offensive line is one of its strengths. Last week, Michigan running back Hassan Haskins fully ran for 125 yards and a touchdown. With Shea Patterson's inconsistency this season, what's Michigan's offensive line and running game more specifically going to have to do to be successful against Penn State's rush defense?
Yeah, Penn State is one of those teams that this is a game I'm waiting for, and I think a lot of people are waiting for, because we know they're good, but we're trying to decide, are they Ohio State light good? Where are they? Because they've done some serious winning, and they've done it in a dominating fashion. and they do it in typical Penn State style. Solid play in the trenches, and just solid play going backwards, whether it's in the offensive backfield or defensively. They've done such a remarkable job. Iowa, man, a team, an enigma. They lose. Michigan just completely shuts them down. I think that they're going to be one of those teams that fights for a title in that Western side division, but not surely how good they are. So this is actually a great litmus test game, and this will say, all right, who's where? Where is Iowa really? Where's Penn State? Because they're up there in that conversation of potential being able to knock off an Ohio State. They're one of the few teams that we've seen play that may be able to play with it this year.
That's what's going to be my next question for you. With the Big Ten East right now, it's looking like Ohio State's leading the pack. You've got Penn State, and Michigan could do a lot. So you've got to play itself back into contention with a strong showing. But just comparing Penn State and Ohio State, do you realistically think Penn State has a chance to contend for the crown? I know they meet in late November, and what's Penn State going to have to show you to convince you that they are serious contenders for the Big Ten East?
Well, I think this weekend, like I said, is a good litmus test. We're going to see how good is Penn State. But yes, to answer your question, they have absolutely, because they're too well coached. They have too much talent to not be to have a shot, and especially in college sports, anybody can beat anybody on a given day. But Penn State's not just anybody. So that's a couple of titans that will be going each other. I don't know where that game's being played, but it definitely makes a difference, especially if it's in Happy Valley. I think it's going to be one of the highlight games of the season, especially in the Big Ten.
Okay. All right, Jim, special teams, we saw them a little bit shaky against Michigan State and play a role, unfortunately, in that loss a couple of weeks ago. How big is it going to be this week, particularly dealing with Javon Leake, who's a pretty dynamic return guy from Maryland?
Yeah, they've got to get their stuff in order. Indiana, talking about Indiana special teams, they have been shaky all season. They're lucky it has not cost them a game, but they haven't been in a game other than, say, Michigan State that was right there, that was close. And then you could actually say that it kind of did cost him there. Ross Fillier he caught a punt at the 5 right before the half that he shouldn't have caught, and there's been some other miscues on that side of it, tackling-wise, that kind of make sure they get the guys down. But I think that adding somebody like Reese Taylor to those teams that Indiana's been able to get back is going to make a big difference for them, and that will help them solidify these things as they go forward.
Jim, do you think this is a bowl team? What are your thoughts? Are they gonna get to 6 this year?
I don't think that's a question. It's not a question in my mind. It's what bowl are they going to get to? I think that they legitimately can be bowl eligible before Indiana gets out of October, which is a rarity for this program. It is a rarity. But the schedule's set up. I think that they should win their next 3 games. They just beat Rutgers. They have a stretch of 4 Big Ten games. They have not won 4 straight Big Ten games since 1993. A good season for Indiana, but that's a long time ago. That shows you how that doesn't happen very often. But I think that they should beat Maryland. I think they're the better team. They come back and they have to go on the road to Nebraska, and that's a tough ask. But I think this team has it in them. Now, whether they get that done or not, I'm not sure. But then they come back home to Northwestern. Even if they go 3-1, they're bowl eligible. And then you still have 3 games left to play. I think it's just a matter of what bowl is Indiana going to end up in. I think they can actually get themselves into a pretty decent bowl if they simply take care of business.
Yeah, harkening back to the Bill Mallory era, right, in the early 1990s, and of course, their last bowl win was 1991 in the Copper Bowl, and that's a goal that Tom Allen has set this season, not just to get to a bowl, but to win a bowl.
Absolutely, it's getting to a bowl is nice, but you also have to put them on the win column to continue that excitement from getting to a bowl. Otherwise, it's just another game. But I think this team is different. I think that history has nothing to do with this team because these kids, the kids that are the strength of this program right now, they're youthful and they're not even from around here. So they don't know the history. They don't care about the history. Tywan Mullins or Michael Penix, those guys, they don't care. They don't care about 1991 or 93 or whatever. So I think that this is a different mindset, and we've seen that they have the abilities. If they can just keep their heads on defensively, they're going to win some games that people may not expect them to win.
Yeah, and Tom Allen doing a really good job with the Southeast recruiting ties. A ton of kids from the state of Florida, kids from Tennessee, kids from Mississippi, Wap Fillier from, Florida, from Tampa, kids from Georgia, really all contributing in a really kind of young, strong roster that they're trying to build there.
Yeah, you did a piece a while back, and if you looked at all the teams, all 14 teams in the Big Ten, Indiana's probably not the team you're going to think that it has the most kids from Florida on it, but yet they do, by far. And we all know that there is such a ton of talent that comes out of that state. That makes a difference. That means you're probably going to be faster. You're going to be just better. When you got that many kids from such a football-producing talent state, you're going to be better, and they're getting better. Their talent upgrade has been amazing. I'll tell you what's amazing to me is he's done it on back-to-back 5 and 7 seasons. So can you imagine if they do have a successful season, that's only going to convince these kids that he has brought in that, well, he's right. This is exactly what he says is going to happen. And so those other kids that they're bringing in is going to make it much easier. So it will continue to make it easier for Tom Allen to bring even more talent in to that program.
Well, certainly we'll see how it plays out the next few weeks. Certainly an opportunity to move towards bowl eligibility. Jim, it's a pleasure as always to have you on.
And it's great to be with you guys. Absolutely, man. I look forward to doing it again. Look forward to seeing you, Elton, in the near future. Of course, I'm sure I'll see you soon as well, Kevin. Likewise.
Absolutely. So for the First and Big Ten podcast, this is Kevin Brockway. Coming up next, our predictions for the week. Stay tuned.
Want to see more from Kevin and Elton? Subscribe to a CNHI newspaper near you.
Welcome back to the First and Big Ten podcast. Kevin Brockway from CNHI Sports Indiana with Elton Hayes from CNHI Sports Pennsylvania. It's prediction time, Elton.
This is our favorite part of the week.
I know, right? Looking ahead to the games. And we got one on Friday night, a little Donnybrook under the lights in Evansville and Ohio State against Northwestern. Ohio State's a 28-point favorite. They're coming off a bye week. I don't see any way that Ohio State's going to lose this game.
No, without the bye week, this game would have been a blowout. But these Ohio State guys on a week of rest against a Northwestern team that has just won one game is a recipe for disaster. I think Ohio State wins with ease.
Northwestern came into the season with a little bit bigger expectations, but the quarterback position has really let them down. Hunter Johnson, 5-star. Everyone thought that he was going to come in and really elevate the offense, and that has not happened.
Yeah, it's a surprise. This is the team that won the Big Ten West just a year ago. And, if you would have told me that they'd be sitting at 1-4 in the season right now, I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are.
Okay, number 6, Wisconsin at Illinois. Another game where, the home team is a heavy underdog, 31 points. Wisconsin, again, I think this is a game that Wisconsin pulls away and wins fairly easily.
Yeah, that Wisconsin defense may pick up its next shutout. It's Illinois is a team right now that has got a lot going on. We saw what Michigan did to it last week. Wisconsin's playing at a high level right now, 6th in the country. Impeccable defense, a great offense. I think Illinois loses a big one at home. Okay,
moving on. Purdue at number 23, Iowa. Iowa an 18-point favorite at home, and the Hawkeyes. The offense has been reeling. Interesting stat. Purdue coach Jeff Brom 2-0 against Kirk Ferentz, which is kind of surprising. For some reason, Brom has matched up pretty well against him. But, Iowa being at home, I think coming off those 2 losses, there'll be a sense of urgency. Purdue is still a little too beat up. It might be closer than 18 points, but I think Iowa's going to find a way to win this game.
I'm going to disagree with you here, Kevin. I don't have faith in this Iowa offense right now. I know Purdue just kind of seems to be finding its stride with a lot of the new guys who are playing in relief of the injured starters. I'm going to say Purdue snags the upset here at Kinnick Stadium and beats Iowa.
Yeah, Purdue is starting to figure some things out, even defensively. Cody Trice at the cornerback position, he had a pick 6 in that game last week. And George Karlaftis, the pass rush, has been really good all season. So Purdue is starting to figure some things out. I just don't know if, they have the necessarily the depth to go in there and win that Big Ten game on the road, but we'll see. It's throwing yourself out there, Elton. I like that. So number 20, Minnesota at Rutgers. Rutgers, another game where the home team is a big-time underdog, 20.5 points, but justly deserved. I don't see how Minnesota doesn't have the greatest defense, but after watching that Rutgers offense, I don't see how they're going to score many points anyway.
Yeah, this one could get ugly quickly. Minnesota's playing great right now, especially in Big Ten play. I think Tanner Morgan, Tyler Johnson are going to exploit this Rutgers and put up another 40-point effort.
No question. It's going to be it's going to be a long season in Piscataway until they find a way to get Greg Schiano or someone to come back and revive that program. Indiana against Maryland. This is an interesting game. Indiana is actually a 3.5-point favorite on the road, coming off the 35-0 win over Rutgers. And here's what Indiana receiver Nick Westbrook had to say about the Hoosiers heading on the road to face the Terrapins.
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing is just taking care of our body. A lot of traveling going on, but at the end of the day, we're still playing football. It's just a different field, and just get the same amount of juice that we'd have, for a home game, and just have that same mentality of how we're gonna, come out and play and prepare.
All right, so I think this is a huge game for Indiana's season in terms of eligibility. They can't afford to let down. Maryland does have a lot of speed on the field. Maryland is coming off that rough loss against Purdue, and you still don't know who's going to play at quarterback, if it's going to be Pigrome or Josh Jackson. I'm going to say that Indiana is going to find a way to win this game.
I agree with you there. Maryland's a program in disarray. They just can't seem to figure it out as of late. Like you said, Michael Penix has really enhanced that Indiana offense. I think Indiana gets its fifth win of the season and is one win away from bowl eligibility.
And that leads us to the big game of the weekend. Number 16 Michigan at number 7 Penn State. If Michigan really wants to win a Big Ten title, it has to start now. I think a second loss in the conference would be crippling to their championship hopes. Penn State at home, they're a 9-point favorite, Elton. I know that, obviously you watch Penn State go on the road and pull off an impressive, really good defensive performance and win against Iowa. I'm going to go with the Nittany Lions here. I think the home crowd is going to play a big factor.
I think that's a safe bet. Jim Harbaugh's 1-6 on the road against AP top 25 teams, and has not led a Michigan team to a win on the road as an underdog. I think Penn State's offense is just too explosive. That defense is playing at a high level right now. It'll be closer than people expect, but I think Franklin ultimately
and then you're going to be there.
Harbaugh.
Another big time game. It should be it should be a lot of
fun.
fun.
I will.
What do they serve in the press box at Penn State?
They vary in it. They've got various cuisines. We've had brisket in there. We've had chicken. They're kind of going for the Southern theme.
Well, they're hoping, I guess, they'll serve up a win for their fans there for Penn State, and I think it's going to be a great matchup and a fun matchup to watch. So we're through with another week of Big Ten football action, and really looking forward to a big Week 8, Elton.
No, I am. This is we're reached the halfway point of the season. The contenders have really stood out, and some teams have kind of been exposed for being frauds. But it's going to be a fun finish.
Yeah, 3 teams ranked in the top 10 too, and maybe this will be the year that either Ohio State or Wisconsin or even Penn State will sneak into the college football playoff too.
The Big Ten has 4 teams in the AP top 25. That's more than any other conference in the country right now. You've got Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Penn State leading the charge, and this is the best year the best chance they have of snapping that streak of being excluded from the college football playoff.
I agree, Elton. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch the second half of the season and to see how it unfolds. So, for the First and Big Ten podcast, this is Kevin Brockway from CNHI Sports Indiana with Elton Hayes from CNHI Sports Pennsylvania, signing off.
Thanks for listening to your number one source for college football and Big Ten news, the First and Big Ten podcast. Enjoy the games.